Ukrainian troops have struck a Russian training ground with M30 Pikin cluster rocket with the use of HIMARS missile launcher in southeastern Zaporizhzia region. Russian army suffered losses in terms of manpower and military equipment during the attack. The video of the strike was circulated in Telegram app on Friday. A Ukrainian soldier speaking in the background said, "This is for Kryvyi Rih," meaning the Russian attack on Kryvyi Rih town in Dnipropetrovsk region on March 5 that killed 4 civilians, including a child. Earlier on Friday, Ukrainian forces struck Russians' command post in Russian-held parts of Kherson and Donetsk regions, killing at least 30 Russian military personnel. A similar attack on Russian military targets was launched in the direction of the city of Pokrovsk in eastern Donetsk region on March 5.
Russian forces are making repeated attempts to establish a presence on the western bank of Ukraine's Dnipro River, according to Oleksandr Prokudin, the head of Ukraine's Kherson Oblast military administration. Russia captured most of Kherson Oblast, including territory on both sides of the Dnipro River in the early stages of the invasion. However, in November 2022, Ukraine forced Russian troops to withdraw from the western bank, including Kherson city. Despite this retreat, Russian President Vladimir Putin declared the annexation of the entire region along with 3 other Ukrainian oblasts, none of which has been fully controlled by Russia to this day. During a working visit to the UK, Prokudin told The Guardian that Russian troops are conducting high-casualty operations at 4 different locations in an effort to gain territory that would strengthen Moscow's position in future peace negotiations. Every single day they are trying to cross. Prokudin said, "We heard from our intelligence that the Russian deputy commander told troops in the area that they had to force the river at any cost, though not all the soldiers are willing to do that." The Russian offensive operations are taking place at 4 locations, across marshy islands at the Dnipro River mouth, at the Antonivka Road and rail bridges east of Kherson city, and near the villages of Lvov and Zmiyivka, with the latter being upstream of the destroyed Nova Kakhovka Dam. According to the local leader, who was directly appointed by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Russian soldiers have been instructed to capture a village on the western bank to make it part of the negotiation. However, he noted that these attempts have so far been unsuccessful. The operations have resulted in high casualties, with attackers often killed or wounded almost immediately after crossing. The Russians completely understand it is a suicidal mission, Prokudin stated. Prokudin believes Russia is attempting to tick a box to demonstrate presence on the western bank and justify claims to the entire oblast. He noted that these efforts have become more urgent as various peace negotiations have begun, including last month's direct US-Russia negotiations held without Ukraine and the EU. The Kherson governor outlined 3 possible scenarios for the war's conclusion. Pro-Russian leadership in Ukraine, Zelensky is replaced, Ukraine cedes territory, and Russia's borders shift closer to Europe. Negotiated settlement with security guarantees, Ukraine secures European-backed guarantees, though Prokudin doubts Europe's commitment without US support. Frozen conflict at current front lines, the most likely scenario, but Prokudin warns it would give Russia time to regroup and resupply. The newly received manpads from Sweden allowed Ukrainian forces to turn the tide in Toretsk by creating a lethal threat to Russian aviation. Euromaidan Press media outlet reports this. It is noted that as Ukrainian fighters began shooting down Russian aircraft, they not only disrupted enemy air support, but also forced Russian forces to scale back their countermeasures, allowing Ukraine to push deeper into the contested town. With the battle for Toretsk coming to a critical point, Ukrainian forces are determined to maintain their foothold on the edges of the settlement and prevent Russian attempts to break out and advance into more open terrain. The Ukrainian presence in the ruins of Toretsk not only prevents Russian forces from fully consolidating control, but also keeps the possibility of Ukrainian counteroffensives alive. Persistent counterattacks effectively drain Russian manpower and resources in brutal urban combat. These strikes prevent Russian forces from regrouping and fortifying their gains, keeping the battle dynamic and forcing the enemy into constant attrition. Euromaidan Press says at the same time, Ukraine's effective use of drones has severely limited Russian mobility, making it dangerous for their infantry to move through the shattered remains of the town. Every Russian advance is met with drone surveillance and precision strikes, ensuring that their movements are neither unnoticed nor unpunished. Unlike previous months, when weak spots could be exploited, Ukrainian positions here are now solidified, leaving little room for Russian infiltration. As Russian attempts to encircle Toretsk failed, Ukrainian defenders maintained direct supply roads without significant disruptions. In addition, the Ukrainian brigades engaged in the area are notably better trained and equipped than the Russian units thrown into the fight, which consist mainly of mobilized personnel from occupied parts of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts, with lower combat morale. This has forced Russian commanders to increasingly rely on airstrikes in an attempt to bomb Ukrainians out of their positions. The frontline situation has prevented Ukraine from positioning its long-range air defense systems closer to Toretsk, allowing Russian jets to operate more freely close to the front without immediate threats from advanced anti-air systems. Russian aircraft have dared to fly closer to provide direct fire support, posing a serious challenge to the Ukrainians. Recognizing the need to counter Russian aerial power, Ukrainian forces have begun to deploy man-portable air defense systems, or manpads, as an effective ambush tool. Unlike stationary long-range systems, manpads are small, mobile, and difficult to detect. This allows operators to fire from concealed positions before relocating. With the inflow of manpads from Sweden, Ukrainians could start using them more freely. Overall, the successful use of man-portable air defense systems in Toretsk has proven how crucial they are for frontline operations. While Ukraine's Western allies have been supplying high-end systems like Patriot to protect critical infrastructure and rear positions, new deliveries of manpads from Sweden will provide even more tactical flexibility to Ukrainian forces on the front lines. These additional weapons will allow them to continue denying Russian air superiority in contested areas like Toretsk, forcing Russian pilots to operate at greater risk or longer distances, abandoning clear air support altogether, according to Euromaidan Press.